Well, welcome back, my illustrious lunar explorers. Last episode, we built a teeny little temporary moon base that we plan on expanding with our mechanical compadre. But as some of you might remember, we have a much more pressing issue at the moment, like the fact that there's an enemy lunar approaching our base, and they don't appear to be coming for conversation. We would rush to a nearby crater rock formation to hide out of sight of our enemy. We were going to have to get quite creative. You see, our enemy, of course, has a laser pistol, and we are completely unarmed. As they turned the corner, we snuck up from behind, using our mechonoid's fire foam popper to try to blind them so they couldn't see us coming. With her visor covered, she was running around completely distraught, giving us an opportunity to jump in front of her, cutting her off while our mechonoid beat her in the back of the head. And this seemed to solve our issue. Now that we get a better look at her as she's attempting to crawl away, we started feeling a bit empathetic. Were we really about to kill the only other living soul here on the moon? I think not, so we started tending to her wounds. After patching her up, we would take her to the brig, which just so happened to be a makeshift prison inside one of our growing rooms. It may be a long shot, but perhaps with enough time, we might just be able to talk some sense into her. But that's something that is definitely going to take a while. In the meantime, we were going to be attempting to better acquaint ourselves with our adversary's little laser pistol here. Under the beautiful stars, it was an odd, dull gray and kind of purple. You know what? It might be better if I just show you an artist's sketch of it. You like it? I thought that you might. Well, after a little bit of horsing around out here, some target practice with this little pistole, we were feeling like a real space cowgirl. After returning to the base, I noticed that our mechanoid had completely shut down. Zero power, which was strange because I had built a recharger. But I had built a normal-sized recharger, and this is a Grande XL mechanoid. Oopsie daisy. After building a proper mechanoid charger, we would drag him in here and hook him up, and he should be a-okay in a couple of hours. While our metallic friend is charging, though, we are going to start working on the next section of our base. And funny enough, this section is actually not going to be connected to the main base itself, and is actually going to be part of another crater formation that we're digging out. But as we were doing this, we completely lost power due to a solar flare, which are not only somewhat more frequent up here on the moon, but bases here are much more susceptible to them due to the moon not having a magnetic field or atmosphere. You'll also notice that we are going through and shutting many of the doors as well as the vents. The reason for this, of course, without power, none of our heaters are running, and though yes, there is still oxygen within the base, things are going to get very, very cold unless we shut the vents and doors. We don't need our prisoner freezing to death, nor do we need our food freezing to death before we can harvest it. With that taken care of, we would get back to our little mining and construction project expansion here. Now this is actually going to be a little spot for prisoners, or at least that's what it is for now. We might convert it later on into something else, but we do need a proper brig for the time being. But for this expansion, as well as any more we have planned in the future, we need a lot of steel. Even though a lot of our walls and windows are being made out of glass, we still have to have steel to reinforce those walls and windows due to the pressure difference. God forbid we, or any of our prisoners, are eating our meals without a space helmet on, and then all of a sudden the window busts wide open, our eyeballs get sucked out of our head through our nose, or something disgusting like that, and it's just a whole ordeal. And one, personally, that I would like to avoid, quite frankly. But as we near completion of our little prison cell here, the brig, you'll notice that it is large enough for 2 prisoners, even though there's enough room technically at the dining table for, well, 4 of them. And we also have some recreation to try to satiate their needs as best we can. We ended up adding in a couple plant pots along with flowers and a bonsai tree for oxygen production. That way our prisoners don't have to wear their spacesuits. And speaking of which, we would strip Porg here of her spacesuit because it also can double as armor, which is not exactly ideal for a prisoner who we're trying to convince to join us, more ideal for a prisoner who's attempting a breakout, if you know what I mean. And since I brought it up, I felt that it's also important to remember that as we expand the base into these new areas, we're going to be building these corridor systems to walk through that are solely made out of glass. And of course, the brig itself has a large glass window, and all these factors combined, basically, if the prisoner attempts to break out through their own brig wall, they're going to die because it's nothing but the moon out there. And we've also made sure that if they attempt to escape through the corridor, there are no heaters in there. They would freeze to death well before they manage to break through the doors and walls. But since we plan on doing some pretty major expansions to the lunar base this episode, I think it would be a good idea for us to go ahead and expend a lot of the resources that we've already collected this episode on a much larger solar field. We're going to need a lot of power because we're going to have a great big base, so it only makes sense. Speaking of a great big base, I think it's also about darn time that we go ahead and fill out the rest of this little lunar hill here that we went ahead and started building our base in last episode. We're going to be adding in 2 brand new rooms, technically 3, but 2 of them are going to be residential, while a third one here, as you can see, is going to be solely a battery room. Not only did we build that large solar field to generate a lot of power, but of course we need somewhere to store it all since we have a lot more coming through. Once our battery bank was completed, we had our residential rooms to go ahead and begin working on. Now these are actually going to be quite a bit more filled out than Mizaki's room, but of course we'll end up upgrading that for her as well. They have all the amenities anybody could want in here: wardrobes, dressers, end tables, plant pots. What more could there be? And with that, a large portion of the main base is finally completed. I plan on expanding maybe to the east a little bit there for our next expansion. Not really sure what else to add into the prison room, except maybe a few more prisoner beds, but for now we're looking pretty good. And we're gonna be looking a whole lot better now that Porg has finally decided to join us. That is right, Mizaki managed to somehow talk a little bit of sense into her noodle, and she has joined our space company. Oh, how nice it'll be not only to finally have another lunar knot up here with us for conversation and for company, but also to help us out with all of our projects. Since we know she's not going to kill us now, probably, but we do know she's also going to be helping us out with building and stuff, we went ahead and let her put back on her spacesuit, and after we got to talking to her for a little bit, we realized that she used to be part of Miasma Aerospace. She was one of their lunar knots, of course, and this private company takes a more conquering approach to landing on the moon and not exactly cooperating with other space companies and their lunar knots, which would explain why she tried to kill us. Apparently she and quite a few other of their lunar knots are actually from the second moon of the planet, the more water-like moon. They have some sort of base over there. I suppose that's an obstacle for the future. As for right now, one of our current obstacles is going to be getting her some psychite tea or some other form of psychite to ingest for medical reasons. Quite literally, she'll die without it. Before we do that though, it would seem we have a little bit of time before she starts feeling any adverse effects, so we are going to have her begin helping us out with an expansion to the east. We're actually going to be turning this into more of a workshop zone for the base, I suppose, but we're also going to be adding in some more residential housing, some stuff that we'll be sprinkling throughout every section, I suppose. But we had also been growing a little bit of dye in our hydroponics basin, and we planned on using this for some furniture, but I think we might just use it to give Porg a more friendly appearance. Not only does she seem friendlier in it, but this way, since the moon can be a little bit dark at times, we don't get frightened by her just popping up in the dark, and we know that it's actually her and not one of her old colleagues come to murder us with a laser gun. This really came in handy for our great big construction and mining project of our brand new workshop and even a storage room as well, it would seem. It is so large, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't do both in here, of course, so we started using up a lot of steel to build the largest shelves possible so that we can store the most amount of resources and items here, which happens to mostly be steel and components, which is all we mine here, but also some cloth, which we've been growing. That's about it. We would also build ourselves an orbital trade beacon, that way we could trade with HQ anytime we like, as well as some of the surface side companies. Speaking of which, we would end up trading off a little bit of our steel for some psychite tea. Just what the doctor ordered for poor gold girl. This way she doesn't die, which is pretty important, I would say. You may notice there on the left next to the light, we even built her a little medicine cabinet specifically for her room for storing said tea, just to show her that we care. You know, it's also a good appreciation, I feel, like a present to show her how grateful we are for all the hard work she's been putting in. I mean, look at this base. It looks great. Nothing could go wrong. Uh-oh. Well, that's probably not good. Looks like we have a meteor shower, with many of them just completely raining down all throughout the area, and even a few of them hitting our power grid. We all braced for impact and tried to rush into our hydroponics area, as it was the safest and most centered area in the entire base, but luckily we never actually got struck by any of these meteors, and it mostly just done some damage to our cables. Let's hope those don't become a much more common occurrence, though. I suppose it wasn't all bad, though. On the bright side, we did end up getting some meteorites made out of compacted steel, giving us a bit more to mine in much smaller clusters, albeit, and this steel would come in mighty handy for our next project here at the base. We are going to be building an observatory. Now, you will notice, of course, that this is not actually under any of the lunar rock formations or mountains or any of the crater formations, and this is because I didn't want anything, and I do mean anything at all, to obstruct the beautiful view of the stars and heavens above. And I do mean truly the skies here on the moon, and even the observatory itself are absolutely stunning, although I suppose the description really doesn't do it justice, so I actually have an artist rendition. You like it? Yeah, I thought that you might. We ended up building a space telescope right slap dab in the middle of the observatory. As one might imagine, this seemed like the perfect place for it, of course. Not only giving us recreation gain, because boy is this fun, but also we can collect the visual data and statistics from it about the distance between stars and yada yada yada, all that boring nerdy shit, and we can report it back to HQ. We also threw in quite a few lounge chairs in here for anyone that might just want to stop in, chill out for a bit, and enjoy this view. And then all of our star research was interrupted by yet another attack by the Miasma Aerospace Force. It would appear that they've sent a squad of 4 this time around, all armed to the teeth. Most likely a squad come to try to rescue Porg. Unfortunately for them, she has switched sides, although unfortunately for us, I don't think they're going to like that answer, so we've decided to hide. Once we noticed they were distracted trying to destroy some of our lamps and other belongings, we would jump out and begin attacking them. Killing one of the Porg would grab his rifle and start attacking the others with it, helping us lay down some cover fire. This was absolutely crucial, especially when our mechonoid was rushing in to try to bash in a few space helmets. Using his fire foam to blind them, we would end up incapacitating yet another. With half of their squad defeated, the remaining members would attempt to flee the area, and we did do our best to chase them down, blasting at them with these lasers and using our packs to try to stay on top of them, but unfortunately they would get away, taking information about our base's location and as well as how many members we have here back with them. Very unfortunate. Well, I suppose at the very least we managed to take some of their weapons, and also we made it out of that little conflict alive. Now then, as for this gentleman, I suppose we'll start tending to his wounds and we'll try to... Oh God. I suppose that maybe Porg knew this guy. and they don't seem to have been friends. Oh well, moving on. Although their attack was primarily focused on the windows and glass walls of our observatory, you will notice that not a single one was breached, and this is why I'm glad we reinforced them with steel, as mentioned earlier in the video. We would need to get rid of these corpses though, as they're not exactly the most pleasant thing to look at. The problem is they're not really going to go away. They're going to stay frozen up here and be continuously irradiated by the sun. Eventually though, we might figure out something to do with them. After a really intense situation like that though, we need to blow off some steam in our recreation room. Although it is a little bit shabby considering it had the bare minimum of everything we had before, and now that we have some helping hands, we might be able to build some more complex recreational areas and devices. For example, at the minimum, some more comfortable chairs and sofas, a computer, as well as 2 arcade machines. Nobody's going to be getting bored here for, well, probably at least a few more days. In the eastern section here of the base that we were mining out earlier for our workshop, as well as a few residential rooms here, I actually want to put in something that I can't believe it's taken me this long to think of. When you're on the moon, or in space in general, of course, anywhere but the planet that you were born and raised on, your body starts to experience gravity and whatnot a little bit differently, and thus you need to exercise to keep up your bone density and your muscle mass. And so we have our very own gym for all of our lunar knots. We have some bench pressing, we have some deadlifting, just some dumbbells, maybe someone wants to do some bicep curls. We also have some treadmills for cardio that are facing the window here. That way they have a beautiful view as they're getting their steps in for the day, I suppose. And something else that we really need here on the moon base is more oxygen production. You can never have too much oxygen. Actually, that's not true, but you know what I mean. We need more vegetation in the base itself, not only to beautify it, but to help us out with our breathing just a little bit. Now, most of these, of course, are just in some of the lunar knots rooms, but we would also go through places like our kitchens and hydroponics areas and add in a few other things. For example, in the kitchen, we added in a sink as well as a refrigerator, water dispenser. We also added in a refrigerator in our hydroponics area in case there's something that needs to be stored ice cold, I suppose. But whereas most of these rooms are only getting a little bit of vegetation, I thought that the observatory would be a place that would be absolutely filled with vegetation. I had to control myself a bit because I almost completely filled it up with vegetation, but I think that this looks pretty good. It is a beautiful place, and a beautiful place where we can look out into the great beyond still. And finally, before we end the episode, we are going to be expanding the base a little bit more. Down south here, we have a much smaller hill and formation of rock from a nearby crater, and we've decided to turn this into our operations room, basically where we can go and communicate with other colonies around the moon once those are set up, as well as headquarters. It'll also be very crucial in helping us plan out any and all missions we plan on going on this moon, or possibly any others. But with that, my friends, our moon base is looking a whole lot different, a whole lot better, if I do say so myself. Not only is it much larger and of course much more self-sufficient than before, but I think that we might be able to handle a few more lunar knots. Time to communicate with HQ and see if they want to send anybody up after our progress today. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay, awesome. So they are sending a small team up, especially due to the fact that we keep getting attacked. They were kind of concerned about that part most of all, it seems. Our colleagues have already arrived. Let us go and greet them. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your new home for, well, the foreseeable future, I suppose. We have one fellow and 2 fellowettes, all of them going by the names of Dawson, Kay, and Elena. We are tickled plum pink to finally have some helping hands around here. It will make our job of mining and constructing and expanding the base furthermore all that much easier as well. well as defending it. Yes, indeed, it would seem that HQ is finally taking things serious, and not only have they sent us a squad of 3 lunar knots, but they've also sent them armed and ready to help us take on any enemies. It's about damn time. Well, while our new moon base mates are getting better acquainted with the place as well as their rooms, perhaps we'll even show them to the workshop and they can get straight to work, we also need to be naming our beautiful mechonoid. Yes, indeed, last episode I asked you guys for your name suggestions, and I'd like to thank anyone and everyone who left a suggestion, but it would seem overall the most liked name was Dave, so that is what we're going with today. And this is a suggestion from our friend Hero Cookie. Now, I do know in your comment you were talking about how previously we were quite lonely, as Dave here was our only companion. That's not exactly the case anymore, but I still feel that the name is very fitting. And once we had all of our lunar knots ready and they were acquainted with the place, it's time for us to start planning out a very important mission to another moon. Perhaps it's time that we take the fight to Miasma Aerospace once and for all. But that'll be next episode. See you later. Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars. Hello, thank you for watching today's episode. I love you guys, very much appreciate you watching. It seems like everyone actually really likes this series. I was kind of not expecting that, and it was more of just a little thing that I kind of planned on doing just because, well, I'm kind of struggling to get episodes out on Sundays now, so this is really cool that everyone loves it. I'm really glad, and I want to say thank you to you guys, as I always do at the end of every video, because I very much appreciate you, and it is very much true. But thank you guys once again for watching. I love you, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.